Oh, why, hello. I've come back to finish Chicken Boy for you. I've been away a little bit doing some driving and been to a wedding. And so I left you hanging with that chicken running around with its head cut off. So we're going to start back on chapter 3 and get that done for you. We're going to read chapter 3 of Chicken Boy. And this book is by Frances O Roark Dowell. And he's the author of W. Co. I've not read that yet. Cody Peters got 2 days in before school detention. Tiger Woods got 4. I got suspended for a week, which was fine by me. I was feeling sort of light and good about everything as I walked out of the principal's office. A week off of school and nobody calling the house to complain? That I never showed up? Hard to beat, son. I was almost smiling by the time I saw Tiger Woods out in the hallway. He didn't look like a kid who could take Cody Peters in a fight. You wouldn't call him exactly fat, but he was pretty close to the line. He'd changed out in his gym clothes, but his street clothes didn't bowl you over with style. It was a baggy look. I guess you'd call it a baggy short-sleeve shirt over a baggy t-shirt. T-shirt and baggy green shorts, black chucks, and baggy white socks on his feet. He'd been leaning against the wall, almost sitting on the floor, his knees sticking out, but he stood up when he saw me. "What'd you get?" he asked. "Detention?" "Nope," I told him, and I kept walking. Tiger joined step with me and said, "Well, she must have given you something." "I mean, no offense, man, but you started it." "Ain't nothing to worry about," I told him, wishing he'd get out of my business. It's hard to feel light and good about something when a guy's trying to get all serious on your butt. Tiger clapped me on the shoulder, not to be mean, more like he'd just been struck by a big idea. "You didn't get expelled, did you?" When I shook my head no, he asked, "Suspended?" "Sucks, don't it?" I said, hoping he'd get the message. I didn't want to talk about it anymore. "They can't do that." Tiger looked at me full in the face. "Why didn't you tell the principal what Peter said? I bet she would have understood." Well, the problem wasn't what Cody said. It wasn't what Cody said. It was what he did. And no way I was going to stand up in the principal's office and do the same. Besides, it was over, and I was free for a whole week. I kept on walking. Tiger stuck out his hand. "My name is Henry Otis. By the way, I thought it was cool what you did, sticking up for Miss Thesman. That's why I jumped into it. Well, that you were getting the snot beaten out of you." He grinned, then looked down at his hand, which was just hanging there in the air. He shoved it into his pocket. "I could get your homework assignments for you if you wanted." He went on, and I headed for the big exit sign over the school's front doors. If Henry followed me out before the last bell, he'd be suspended too. He either didn't know it or he didn't care. Or if you get bored, you could come over to my house after school. I live on a farm. It's over on Strickland Road near the Char Grill. It used to be a horse farm, but they sold most of it to developers. We've got a couple acres. You could come and see the chickens I'm raising. The door swung open like it'd been oiled just for my exit. Outside, the air was filling up with the exhaust fumes from the 100-some minivans and SUVs come to pick their babies up from jail. "I think you're the only person in this school who doesn't suck, Macaulay." Henry called after me. Nobody else would have stood up for Miss Thesman, that's for sure. I turned around in the doorway. Henry made it sound like I was some kind of hero. To the best of my knowledge, nobody had ever thought that. I was heroic before, and I sort of liked the feel of it. I stared at Henry hard for a second before opening my mouth. My granny has chickens, I said finally. I seen her twist one's head off once. Pretty gross, Henry said. But he didn't seem all that upset by it. Yeah. Excuse me. I guess, I shrugged. It ran around the yard a minute without its head, just like they say. You want to come over and see ours? We won't kill them or anything. Nah, I pushed my way out the door. I got stuff to do. I didn't have a thing in the world to do, but no need to report that fact to Henry Otis. And that was all of chapter 3. And next time we'll be on chapter 4. Or we could go ahead and read it. Let's just go ahead and read it. This will be chapter 3 and chapter 4. Chapter 4, Monday. Monday morning, my dad woke up at first light, which was when he left for work. Don't you go anywhere today? You hear me, son? Not out in the yard, not to your granny's, no place, but right in this house. This is punishment time, not playtime. I mumbled, okay, and rolled over. Next thing I knew, my sister Summer was in to wake up Patrick for school. Patrick groaned, but he got up because Summer'd do some damage to you if she had to yell at you more than once to get your behind out of bed. I heard Patrick's feet thud as they hit the ground. He took the trouble to pelt me with a ballpoint pen cap on his way out of the room. But that didn't keep me from falling back to sleep. When I finally woke up, the sun was pretty far up there. At first, I got that nervous feeling of having messed up bad by being late for school, but then I remembered about being suspended. I stretched out on my bed, feeling the luxury 7 days ahead of me and no school in sight. I planned out what I'd do first, middle and last, flip on the TV to watch cartoons and then get some breakfast. And then after that, more TV. Flopping down on the saggy blue couch in front of the television, I felt like I was in the middle of a cruise ship. Usually, we all crammed on this there watching something and eating whatever meal it was for that time of day. Me, Patrick, and Daddy. Shane, if he was having a fight with Becca, his girlfriend, and Summer when she wasn't working, which she usually was. Elbows stuck in your side and knees jammed against your knees, and drink spilled over onto the cushions. You might get 5 seconds in a row enjoying your food. But on this particular morning, I set myself up good. Head on the pillow at one end, feet on the pillow at the other. Jimmy Neutron racing across the TV screen. Then I got hungry, so I rolled right off the couch and onto the floor and went on ahead and rolled straight into the kitchen. I decided to roll everywhere I went all week, since there wasn't anybody home to make a smart aleck remark about it. Here's the thing. Every once in a while, during the commercials, or when I was rolling my way to the kitchen, I got to thinking about the fight with Cody Peters, and I felt this buzzing feeling that started in my stomach, zigzagged up my spine, and ran all the way to the top of my head, so that I had to shake out my whole body to settle back down. By Wednesday, that feeling was so alive in me, I couldn't make it go away by watching cartoons or nothing. When I thought about the fight, I didn't feel like me anymore. I was this other guy, one who wasn't afraid to jump on the strongest kid in the 7th grade. A guy who did nothing instead of just sitting there. A guy that did something instead of just sitting there. He didn't do nothing. He took up for Miss Desmond. I got to feeling so strange that I finally got dressed. I decided to make myself some breakfast. Something besides fruit roll-ups and Doritos. But by Wednesday, the kitchen was too big of a mess to get an appetite going. The dishes in the sink looked like they'd been pushed in by accident. And the sink had this line of crusty gunk running around it with the dishwashing water, where the dishwashing water had stood for a while before it drained out. A pot of dried out macaroni and cheese sat on the stove next to the pot of alphabet soup. They'd been there so long, little stars of mold were sprouting in between the letters. Nothing in the refrigerator except 2 cans of beer, a jar of clam juice, and 7 bottles of Summer's nail polish. I ended up eating half a bag of miniature marshmallows for breakfast. You want to feel low down and sorry? That's how you do it, son. Eat a crunchy breakfast in the middle of your cruddy kitchen that nobody's bothered to clean. In weeks, it didn't make me want to go back to school, but I had to get out of the house so I could get that buzzing feeling back and figure out what it means. Figure out what it meant. I could have ridden my bike over to Granny's with my eyes closed, left on Honeycutt Road, go 1/4 of a mile, swerve around the big pothole. City services never got around to fixing the big pothole. Another 100 yards, then right on Durant, right on Mason Farm Road, go past 3 mailboxes and 1 oak tree, struck by lightning the summer I turned 8, and left into Granny's driveway. When I pulled up to the carport, there she was under her truck, only her feet sticking out. "You can't drive that thing," I said to the bottom of her tennis shoes. "So why are you working on it?" Granny's voice slid out from underneath the Toyota. "Judge can revoke my license for 30 days, but he can't revoke my toolbox. I've neglected old Bessie here for way too long, making up for lost time now." I leaned my bike up against the side of Granny's house. Calvin, the biggest mutt in Granny's dog posse, ran up and started sniffing on me, but I swatted him away. "You're lucky that's all the judge did to you," I said. To be honest, I was disappointed Granny didn't get any time for pulling up on the front of the sidewalk of Legion Middle School. I'd been looking forward to visiting her in jail. I'd planned to sneak her a pack of Fig Newtons, which she was pretty much addicted to. "Hand me that drill bit extension," Granny called to me. I found her toolbox on the truck's tailgate, but when I searched around inside it, I couldn't find what she wanted. Granny shimmied out from under the truck and into the daylight. Still lying flat on the concrete, she rubbed her chin like she was trying to remember where she'd put it, smudging her face up with oil in the process. "I bet Eddie has it," she said finally, wiping her hands on her shirt. "That's too bad, because I don't think I'll be seeing much of him anymore." "You have a fight?" I asked her. Eddie was Granny's latest boyfriend. She always had one hanging around somewhere in case she needed somebody to go fishing with. The thing you noticed most about Eddie was that he was old as the hills, but still had a head of flaming red hair. Other than that, he didn't much stand out. From all of the other boyfriends Granny had over the years, Granny pushed herself up on her elbows. "He says he's done with me now that I've been arrested. Says he's tired of my stunts, as he calls them. I told him that wasn't no stunt. I was just running late. I started sorting through Granny's toolbox, lining up the screwdrivers, putting the nippers and the snips back into order. I sniffed the pocket wrench, taking in that oily metallic smell. Not to change the subject, Granny said, sitting all the way up her back against the truck. But I hear you got yourself suspended. Your daddy called and left a message on my machine. Said you'd been fighting. She paused. Said you wasn't to come over here all week. You gonna make me go home, I asked, knowing the answer already. Why? 'Cause your daddy called? Granny grabbed hold of the door handle and pulled herself up with a grunt. I don't need him to tell me how to conduct my business with you. That sounded awful civilized for Granny. She tended to be a little more down in the dirt about her feelings when it come to my dad. The few times I'd seen them in the same room together since my mom died, Granny had always managed to bring the topic around to how my dad didn't do enough to help my mom get better. They got doctors all over the country that could have cured that girl, she'd say, pointing a bony finger in Daddy's face. If you'd had a decent job, decent insurance, she'd still be with us today. Then she'd say something about how it had been a mistake ever to let my mom marry him. My dad always looked like he was going to haul off and pop her one when she said that, but he never did. He usually just growled, "You're a crazy old woman," and stomp out of the room. Sometimes I wondered if he wasn't a little bit right. One afternoon, a couple years after she died, I'd taken down my mom's photo albums from her closet. My dad's face was cut out of every picture he'd appeared in. Somehow, Granny had snuck into our house and done that, which might add up to crazy in some people's books. So how about this boy who jumped in the fight with you, Granny said after I'd told her what happened to get me suspended. He's a friend of yours? Not really, I said, following Granny to the kitchen door. He asked me over to his house, though. Granny turned around and looked at me. You going? I shrugged. No, it's too far. He lives over on that horse farm over on Strickland near the char grill. Granny said, nodding. She went inside, holding the door open for me. The kitchen was cool and dark. It smelled like coffee and had been on the smelled like coffee that had been on the burner all day, and the lemon oil Granny rubbed on her cabinets. I heard they sold that place off bit by bit. Taxes got to be too much for 'em. It ain't but a 10-minute bike ride from here. Why would I want to go over to his house? I asked, moving a stack of newspapers off a chair so I could sit down at the kitchen table. He just wants to talk about the fight. How's he the one who got Cody Peters laid out flat? Person invites you over to his house. You ought to go, I reckon, Granny said. She handed me a can of Coke. Show 'em you got manners. At the very least, you don't have to stay but 15 minutes. Make some polite talk, then be on your way. You think he's having a tea party over there? You could use a friend, Granny said. You spend too much time with old women. She started washing her hands at the sink, lathering them up good with dishwashing soap. Wouldn't hurt you to make the effort for once in your life. Sometimes you can know things about yourself, and I knew I was looking for an excuse to go over to Henry Otis's house, and I knew Granny would nag me into it. I argued back and forth with her for a few minutes, then acted like I was giving in. All right, I'll go, I told her, just as soon as school lets out. But he's just wanting to brag on that fight. Granny grinned and grabbed a dish towel to dry off her hands. Let him brag then. Sounds like he saved your behind. And next time we'll be on chapter 5. And we're reading The Chicken Boy. So that was chapters 3 and 4. Remember to read more in 2024 and grow your brain. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.